I'm Aryeh Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The draft has come and gone. The WNBA season is officially here, at least if you're talking to us. It's time to dive in, discuss, and react to the biggest WNBA draft of all time. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Okay, Rachel, we're back. A lot to discuss. News is flying left and right. We've already done an hour on the Bleacher Report show, WNBA Weekly, Tuesdays, 3 p.m. on the Bleacher Report app or website. You should check it out. So we're not going to go on a whole team breakdown, but what we will discuss, reactions, thoughts, insight. What is tickling your mind today, the morning after the WNBA draft, as we're still trying to place all these things where training camp contracts are still being handed out. Invites are being handed out left and right for players who were not drafted or players who did. What's your main takeaway from last night, Rachel?
I was sitting there basically trying to grade out the specific teams, and then Bleacher Report asked me to grade out each specific pick, which was a little bizarre to me, I'm not going to lie. But, it was a good activity and challenged my mind in a different way. But I felt like for the most part, everybody had, I can't look at anybody and say, what the hell was that? I think that if I had a biggest what the hell was that, it would be the Minnesota Lynx. But it's not necessarily because of their picks, because I don't think the picks have a realistic chance of being on the roster this season, even with Anastasia Kosu, who I've watched, I've been aware of, I've evaluated. That's a future pick. That's a long-term asset. I know Cheryl Reeve said today, something about her, we expect her to be at camp, but I'm like, why? That doesn't make sense. I don't even understand that comment and why that would be made. Because when you look at this Lynx roster, we're maybe you can scratch and claw from a draft pick and through a training camp for one spot. But I'm more so what the hell with this whole giving up the 11th pick, giving up a first round in 2026, getting Carly Samuelson. Nothing against Carly. She fills a specific need that the Minnesota Lynx have not addressed all offseason. They've done really nothing all offseason. And we just got the impression they're going to run it back, but without Chechi Zandalacini. And I don't know. I just don't know if it's enough. That's what I'm trying to say. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the draft and keeping that 11 pick would have been enough. Probably not if we're realistic, looking at a rookie to come into a contender and help put them over the edge. I feel like this is a win now move out of the Lynx organization. They're trying to bring home a championship with this specific core, with this specific group around Nafisa Collier. So from that standpoint, I understand it. I just don't know if they've done enough this entire offseason. And that's more so I'm not talking about the draft. I'm talking about just the entirety of their offseason. I don't know that they've done enough.
Yeah, maybe I got Lynx in the mind because I'm in Minnesota and I have my family's Lynx wall behind me. No, I completely agree. I don't think the moves did enough. I think we knew going into the offseason what they needed to add was more depth of shooting. That's, in my opinion, that's what it came down to. Yes, we can argue about the call that shouldn't have happened and how they should have won the championship even without that more depth of shooting. Fine, cool. I agree with you. I think it was a bad call. I think they got cheated out of winning it. I get you. But what happened this offseason? You added a post player from France. Great. Love it. Cool. Not addressing that need. Maybe addressing the aspect of giving a little bit of rest time to some of your other key players. Fine, I get it. But then you lose Chechi Zandalacini, who was your main depth scoring option. So now you were at -1. Now you're at -2 or negative, whatever you want to say. And so they haven't addressed that. And then, all the other free agencies going on and they still haven't addressed it. And you're sitting there is it because you can't address it? There's just not a good option that's in the free agent market. Fine. Okay. I get that. So then you got to go overseas, try and find somebody who's not necessarily going to be in the draft that you can sign and bring over, a hidden overseas talent. And that's kind of where I was going with some of when I was asked about who I think they should take. They didn't do that in the draft. They decided to make a move, for one of the Samuelsons, who have bounced around this league left and right and have not been able to stick anywhere because they haven't.
But finally did
last year. Yeah, on a horrible team that, was up for the number one pick. So, like, when I say stick, like, look, the articles in the Star Tribune over the past 2 days, I've been reading them, the local Minnesota newspaper. They're all saying she's stuck for the last year. She found her footing a year before that. Great, cool. You've been able to stick on a bad team. Can you produce on a good team where teams are giving it your all? Because for their whole career, both of the sisters, if I'm being blunt, the teams who are playing you are taking an off night. I'm sorry. Like, that's rude, that's mean, whatever. But, like, they're not giving you the same punch, the same drive as when they're going up against Vegas or New York or Connecticut or heck, Minnesota. So I need to see that you can actually deliver on a good team. Until then, it's extremely underwhelming. And I don't like that you gave up a first round pick for her.
Correct.
You should have been trying. Obviously, in my opinion, also, obviously, they were not able to get 11 for Samuelson, which is kind of wild when you think about it.
Yeah. Who else? No, I was just like, okay, who do we talk about? I do want to give a little love to the Phoenix Mercury, who were on the sidelines last night, had no picks whatsoever, not one, because they traded them all away in ridiculous fashion, and that's why they have 4 players on their roster, and the other 9 spots are going to be filled out through training camp contracts. But they made a really good move the day after signing Kansas State wing Tamara Poindexter to a training camp contract. And it's so funny. Get on her hoop stats and look at their roster sheet right now and all the different. I think they have 11 training camp contracts out right now. Very top heavy team. So it's just, sometimes you see these final couple of spots on each of these teams be filled. If players are lucky enough for there to be a couple of spots available, you see them really battling out with rookies through the draft, or battling it out with, different training camp experienced players. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in Phoenix, and I thought that was a really nice addition. I kind of expected Poindexter to be kind of a 3rd round pick. I'm a little surprised that she wasn't, but hey, it doesn't really matter. A lot of these players, when you get to late first into the rest of the draft, it comes down to fit and need. And obviously there's an opportunity there in Phoenix. I think we got to talk about Seattle. Had a great draft, did exactly what I anticipated they were going to do in drafting Dominique Malanga, 6'6", 19-year-old out of France. Listen, I had her on as number 2 long before Miles decided that she was going to stay in college. And there was a reason for that. When I basically just had to step back and I just looked at their roster and I was like, man, I've kind of told myself they needed depth at the guard spot. But when you looked at it, I was like, the more glaring concern is going to be longevity in the post. NECA's getting a little bit older. 2026, everybody's going to be gone. So who are some franchise type players that you can build around the future with? And Malanga is a complete no-brainer. So they took care of business there. But then to go out and get Serena Sundell in the 3rd round, shocking to me that she dropped that low. I understand people's hesitations with her shooting percentages. Listen, that was not her role at Kansas State, was to score. That was not her role. Her role was get the ball to Ayoka Lee, high percentage shots, high percentage shooters in Poindexter, Terrence Sides, Zai Walker. Her job was to generate high percentage shots. Now, when Ayoka Lee went down, what did Kansas State start to do? Well, they started to post her up a little bit. She's 6'2". She's a 6'2" point guard that can play really probably the 1 through 4 positions, if we're realistic. I don't even know that I see her being a point guard in the WNBA. Maybe more off the ball, whatever it is, but they'll start to post her up. She can exploit mismatches. But what people don't talk about enough with Sundell is she's a phenomenal defender. She's got great instincts. It's not like she's a liability. She's a very, very good defender coming from a really good defensive system. It's going to be interesting. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have just been drinking the Big 12 Kool-Aid a little bit too much. But I just felt like that's a player that, has a lot of things that she can do exceptionally well. And she's so smart. And she's a competitor, and she, again, just generating high percentage shots. She doesn't have to be the it guy. She can go, facilitate for others. I just thought that was a no-brainer. That room was celebrating when they had her available there in the third round. And then Madison Connor, obviously an elite shooter from TCU and probably the best perimeter shooter in the country. So huge draft for Seattle. I'm excited for them. And then I think I want to talk about Washington. They did what they needed to do, what they had to do, what they really had no choice with those types of picks. Like, you're going to get players, but I thought they did a really great job with, securing Citron, Iria Fenn, Amor in particular. Those three, I think, can have pretty major impact for roles right away in year one.
Yeah, no, and DC has so much opportunity. I like what you said about the Mercury. That's going to be, they need to make a reality TV show, that training camp. It's going to be insane. It's like they have like 50 people there. I feel like, look, there are some teams that, going into it, when you kind of put on your coach, your GM hat, your player hat, even, you need to find motivation for the season. There's teams that are motivating themselves saying, we're going for a championship. You're talking, a Phoenix, you're talking New York, Minnesota, Vegas even. And then there's the teams that are like, okay, people don't expect us, but we can win that championship. Maybe you're talking about an Atlanta, maybe you're talking about a Dallas or a Seattle. And then there's those teams that are like, we can't even trick ourselves that we're going to be competing for a championship. Like, let's be honest here. And so they're sitting in that spot and they're going, how do we motivate ourselves? What is our goal for this season? And I think a lot of these teams, specifically the Mystics, you have so much opportunity for these young players for a new core to be established. You mean Amor, Citron, Kiki, Shakira. That is a nice, solid core of really young players that can grow together and could be a formidable, team making championship aspirations very, very soon. But right now, their goal is growth and finding that continuity, finding that gel, finding that system that works for them. And hey, maybe some of them don't work out and some of them move on to a different team, or, some of them are surprising us and they are contenders, or they are amazing players, cornerstone players. But we have to go into this and it's something that I think, and I've probably brought this up a billion times, so you're probably sick of me saying this, but I think it's something you do a really good job of, which other people in the WNBA space can struggle with, which is, it's easy to watch college basketball and see these players putting up 19 points and 8 rebounds and 8 assists a night and shooting some crazy percentage and thinking to yourself, hey, this player's amazing in college. She's a top 25 player in college. She's going to be amazing in the W. And it doesn't always translate, whether it's in college, they were just getting popping shots, but they're not going to get that role in the pros, or if it's or whatever it is. It's understanding that, there is going to be a growth process. I always say you don't understand if a player is a bust or a star until years 3 to 5. That's when you truly get that understanding. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. Some people are going to falter. Some people are going to succeed. And that's what the joys of this upcoming season are going to be. And the hard part for us as media is that we can't be at every training camp. We're not going to be able to view all the preseason games. So understand that we're trying to piece things together while we're viewing things, and also try and let you in kind of behind the curtain. We're giving you our unabashful, honest, and critical commentary.
I think that's what I'm most excited about with this year is, for so many years we've been doing this. We've just kind of been, it's the same vets, the same players. You maybe have, 3 or 4 rookies that are, getting opportunity. This just feels like we're entering a new era of this league where you're bridging, if there was a gap, I guess you guys get what I'm trying to say, but you're bridging the gap of the college game, the professional game. You're bringing in fan bases from the collegiate game because you're no longer going to have just 4 or 5. There's going to be a lot of new players in the league this year. There's going to be even more new players in the league next year because of the roster spots and because of the franchises that are being added. I think that's what I'm really excited about. It just feels like it's a turning of the page. It's a pivotal moment for the WNBA as a whole. Obviously, we have our veterans and we have, everybody that we've been watching and talking about for years, Asia Wilson's, Brianna Stewart's, the elite. But now you have this new age, of opportunity for collegiate, and even I'll take another step, just international pro players who maybe, have had pro deals for a while, but are now getting an opportunity. It's just going to be great because there's just going to be so much more to break down and unpack and new players to really watch and see how they elevate and translate into the next level. So I know that's what I'm most excited about for this year.
The last thing I'll add before we log off, something that I always find cool, and I think this year could happen even more so because of those roster spots, availability, and possibilities and opportunity. Players who are drafted and that team doesn't have a roster spot for that player, they're going to get cut at some point.
Yep.
They're going to go through, the whole process of becoming a free agent. And then we're going to see teams that wanted them. They're going to have to make a tough decision. Do we bring them on? How's this player who's already in our camp looking? But we really wanted this player in our draft board. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how the shuffling happens once training camp starts. Another thing to keep in mind is often what you'll see is teams drop the obvious players early, move on, and drop the players they want as late as possible. Because if another team's roster is already set, more likely you go through the waiver wire and then you can bring them on later on. So a lot of tricky 3D chess being played by these coaches and GMs, and it will be exciting to kind of see what happens. Rachel, thank you as always, and we'll see you guys back whenever we record, probably next week. Have a good one.